Hey everyone, it's Professor Morris. How is everybody doing? I hope you're doing well. Today is a short lecture on issue spotting, which is part of the week 2 weekly class lecture. We are going to kind of go over some of the basics of issue spotting because as I started to kind of sit down to write this lecture, I realized pretty quickly that issue spotting is really tough, and it is probably something that is a bit too big of an ask for students at your level of legal studies. And I only say this because in law school, issue spotting is taught. In fact, I'm going to teach you the methodology that they teach in law school for issue spotting. But it takes years. I mean, over the 3-year period of law school, you really don't start to get recently, relatively proficient at the skill until your third year. And even then, you spend a lot of time after law school learning how to properly do this. So to ask paralegal students at your level of education to start issue spotting is again a kind of a big ask, and don't get the wrong impression. I'm not saying this because I don't believe in your skills or your abilities or intelligence. That has nothing to do with it. It simply has to do with the type of education you've gotten up to this point when it comes to the law and understanding how legal principles work in certain fields of law. And I'll explain this when I go over the example that we're going to cover for this particular lecture. Because again, it takes a knowledge of the law to truly do a really good job of issue spotting. And so what I imagine will happen in your situations is that you will hopefully continue on with the paralegal program at TCC, number one, and two, that once you graduate and you're out in the real world working at a law firm, or maybe even going to law school, that you'll get another shot at this, and over time you will develop the type of knowledge of the law and legal principles in various fields of law in order to really get good at this, to really get good at issue spotting, because again, it is tough. In fact, if you go on the internet or on YouTube and start kind of looking up this topic, sort of like I did in preparation for drafting this week's lecture, you run into kind of self-help video after self-help video and article after article geared towards law students who are struggling with this issue in law school, and they're panicking and they're freaking out because law school is really stressful and grades are hugely important, and so they have gone to these videos and articles to try and find some sort of secret formula in order to kind of figure out how to do this. And the articles and the videos kind of say it, that there is no magic formula, that it simply requires practice and a knowledge of the law. And again, at your current level of education in the law and in legal studies, I just don't know if you're there yet. Some of you may be, some of you may know more about the law than I do. But for the rest of the class, I want to kind of walk you through this, and I hope that by kind of starting at the very basic points of how to do this, that will help you wrap your brains around the skill, and then as you move forward in your legal studies career, that you will get better at this and more proficient, and hopefully at some point in time you'll be doing a better job than the attorneys at the law firm are doing, and they may even come to you and say, hey, can you read this case and spot the issues for me, because I don't have time and I need your help. And that's what great paralegals and legal assistants are kind of born to do. So that is what we're going to do today, is essentially what we're going to do. And as you've noticed already, this is a relatively short written lecture because there just isn't a lot of material other than what's in the textbook. And again, I want you to read chapter 2 in the textbook as well as reading today's class lecture, or this week's class lecture. And and move forward with the second assignment, which will also be posted on Canvas. But what we're going to do today is we're going to go over an exam question that I wrote in another legal studies course in family law, which I taught last spring. And in that hypothetical, as they call it, or it's sort of a case synopsis or hypothetical. And again, if you go to law school, you'll see this a lot. In fact, you may see this in other legal studies courses. In fact, you'll definitely see them in the classes that I teach on particular subject matter, because I think it's a great way to learn the law, is to create these kind of fictional hypotheticals that are just, replete and covered with issues that you can spot various ones. In fact, in this hypothetical we're going to go over, there's an issue basically in every sentence. And I'll describe how that works in a second. So this is it's a family law exam question. It's an essay question, and it's a hypothetical based off of a family law case where we're pretending that you are the paralegal at a family law firm. You have a client named Janet who comes into the office, and as the paralegal, you are conducting the initial client interview, which is something very important. If you take any of my other legal studies classes, which I hope you do, you will quickly learn from me how important I think the intake interview is. And it's usually a paralegal who conducts those with the potential client. This is the client who is for the first time either walking into your office of the law firm or calling you to inquire about the attorneys who work at your law firm and hiring them for their case. And an intake interview is that time when the paralegal will sit down with that potential client and just go over the facts of their case and ask them pertinent questions about what happened in their case, and try and keep the client on point with regards to their story, because clients tend to kind of drift off and go into a bunch of superfluous issues that don't really matter to the case. But that's just how clients operate, especially when they're nervous or if they're under a lot of stress. And let's face it, if you are either getting ready to engage in a lawsuit or you're being sued, or if it's in, like with this hypothetical, a divorce case, you're going to be under a lot of stress. And the paralegal's job is to keep that potential client focused on the legal issues of the case, so that you can report those to the attorneys, and they can decide then on whether to take the client to meet with them one-on-one as well, and move forward with their case. And so let's take a look at the process of the intake interview in the context of this hypothetical fact pattern, if you will. And again, this is family law. This was an exam question that I wrote for family law. And I wrote this, and I wrote it with the specific design of giving the student a lot of issues to spot before they would then start answering various questions that I posed to them. Before we get started, I wanted to make sure that you also understand that in the process of issue spotting, we are also going to be dealing with the way to organize the legal issues, and it's based off of an acronym called IRAC, or IRAC, Issue, Rule, Analysis, Conclusion. Issue, obviously the I in IRAC, Issue, Rule, Analysis, Conclusion, or IRAC. And the issue is the I in IRAC. And it's the first part of the legal analysis. So you spot the issue in the issue, then you apply the rule of law, which again, I'll show you as we go through this hypothetical. Then you provide some analysis based off of the rule and the issue, and then you draft a very short conclusion to kind of sum up what you've covered. So keep that in mind as we move forward. And by the way, I will be posting this fact pattern as well as the model answer that I provided to the students in my family law class for this fact pattern in the weekly class lecture. So you'll be able to actually read this and follow along with this while you watch and listen to this video. So again, I wrote this hypothetical with issues in mind. So I'm going to read it first, then we'll go over the issues that are in this particular fact pattern. Okay, so Steve and Janet have been married for 20 years. They have a 12-year-old son born of the marriage. Due to Steve's, I guess, long work hours and prioritization of his career over his family responsibilities, Janet now wants a divorce. She wants to divorce Steve, and Steve is a lawyer and partner in a law firm and earns a significant salary as well as annual cash distributions from the law firm because of his partnership. Due to his legal and business duties, Steve works over 60 hours a week. 4 years ago, Janet was diagnosed with cancer, which has severely impacted her own career and earning ability. However, Janet claims her cancer does not affect her ability to parent the couple's son. Janet is seeking a divorce and primary custody of her son. And of course, Janet is now discussing these matters with you during a potential intake or excuse me, a potential client initial interview or intake interview. Okay, so that's the fact pattern, and you'll have to apologize. I have to kind of play with my glasses to read this because it's on a small screen. So my apologies for that. But that is the fact pattern, and this thing is chock full of issues, and it's for a reason. And if you see made up fact patterns like this on a paralegal exam or on another exam you take at TCC in legal studies, or if you go into law school and a law school exam, these fact patterns are designed to be chock full of issues, but to give you plenty to discuss and talk about on your tests. So the first issue actually starts with the very first line of the hypothetical, and that is that Steve has been married. Steve and Janet have been married for 20 years. That already raises a legal issue. And when you are writing this down for your potential boss in the future, and you spot an issue like that, that's the first thing you're going to write is, in this case, if it's a family law case and you're writing this for a family law attorney, long-term marriage. 20 years in Florida, under Florida family law, is considered a long-term marriage. And that raises the issue of alimony. So the first issue that you would see in this case, based off of the very first sentence, is that alimony is likely to be a factor in this case. And you know that because it's a long-term marriage. Over 20 years is anything over 14 years in Florida is considered a long-term marriage. Anything from 7 to 14 years is sort of in the gray area where you can request alimony, or what is also known as post-marital support or post-marital spousal support. And you can make that argument to the court, but you may not get it. But if it's over 14 years, you're likely to get alimony awarded by the court. So the second sentence, they have a 12-year-old son born of the marriage. Again, another issue. This is going to be a child custody case. You've got a minor child. Remember, children do not age out of their what is known as their infancy until they reach the age of 18. And in some cases, even if they're 18, but they haven't graduated from high school yet, they are still considered a minor as far as child custody goes. So here we've got a 12-year-old child, clearly a minor. And so child custody is also going to be an issue in this case. So I would write down as part of my second issue, and again, we're issue spotting here, that child custody, that this could be or this is likely going to be a child custody case. In fact, later on in the fact pattern, you saw that Janet wants primary custody of her son. So you are definitely going to have a fight on your hands, because remember, whoever has primary custody is also the person who's going to receive child support. So we've already going to have an issue with regards to a long-term marriage and spousal support, or alimony in this case. But now we've got a second issue, and that is with regards to child custody of the party's son, because the parties usually will fight over who has to pay child support. So let's go to the next sentence. That Steve's long work hours and prioritization of his career over his family responsibilities Janet now wants a divorce from Steve because he's obviously dedicating too much of his time to his work. This could be a factor. I think if you were issue spotting here, I would write down that, Steve has long work hours. And the reason that could be an issue in a family law case is because one of the arguments you can make that Janet, if you're Janet's attorney or you're on her legal team as a paralegal, your team may argue in court that Janet not only deserves primary custody of their son, but that it would be in the best interest of their son to have Janet as the primary parent in this case, because Steve works too much. And what's the point of the court issuing the parenting to Steve, the husband, if all he's going to be doing is giving the child to a nanny or a babysitter that he's hired because he's too busy working at his law firm? So again, another issue there. Steve is a lawyer and partner in his law firm and earns a significant salary as well as annual cash distributions from the law firm because of his partnership. So here, again, another issue. In fact, just about every sentence in this hypothetical is going to be an issue. Big hint. This is not always going to be the case in law school exams or other exam questions that you get that are hypotheticals and that have been drafted by a professor. And it's definitely not going to be the case if you're reading case law from a court. But in this particular situation, just about every sentence here is an issue. So it's easier to spot it here, but I want you to at least get the concept of issue spotting and what it entails. I want you to wrap your brain around that idea so that you can continue to develop the skill moving forward. So the fact that Steve earns a significantly higher salary than Janet is sick, obviously, and isn't working because she has cancer. That is going to play, again, a big role in the two previous issues that we talked about. Issue number one, alimony. Why? Because under Florida law, alimony or postmarital spousal support is based off of two things: need and ability to pay. Need and ability to pay. In this situation, if you're on Janet's legal team representing her in this divorce case, you are going to argue to the court that Janet has the need for postmarital support because of her cancer diagnosis and inability to work. And Steve has the ability to pay because he makes a lot of money as a partner in his law firm. The other reason that's important, the fact that Steve earns a substantial salary, is because of child support, because the child support calculations in the state of Florida are based off of your income, the paying parent's income, as well as the non-paying parent's income. And there's a very complicated formula, usually now done by software, that calculates what the child support figure would be based upon those numbers. And I can tell you that the higher the income of the paying parent, the higher that child support figure is going to be. So again, that's another issue that you would write down if this were a real life case and Janet was actually in your law office talking with you during her intake interview with your law firm. So now let's go to the next sentence. Due to his legal and business duties, Steve works over 60 hours a week. We've already discussed that. That obviously would play a role in Steve's ability to parent the child in the custody battle. Now we get to Janet and her cancer diagnosis. 4 years ago, Janet was diagnosed with cancer, which has severely impacted her own career and earning ability. This goes to the need element in alimony cases. Remember, need and ability to pay. And it also could play a role in her child support figure if she's successful in her bid to get primary care of her son. And before I go any further, I want to make sure that you understand that I'm throwing a lot of legal issues at you for a reason, to help you understand issue spotting. But I'm also throwing a lot of family law stuff at you. And obviously, this isn't a family law course. This is legal writing. But I am trying to also illustrate to you how important it is for you to understand the law to become a good issue spotter. One of my first jobs out of law school was working in family law, so I've got a little practice at this. I do not expect any of you to be able to do this kind of analysis on any exam that I would give you either in this class or in any other course. I'm always going to kind of spoon feed you the law because, again, you're not law students, and I certainly understand that, and I don't want anybody to misconstrue what I'm trying to do here. I want you, again, to simply understand that knowing the law is a big part of issue spotting, because it's not always going to be so cut and dry in the real world. And you will get better at this the more you work. And for example, let's say you graduate from TCC, you get your paralegal AS degree through our AS program in legal studies. You get a nice job at a family law firm. And, obviously your first few months, maybe even your first year working at this law firm, you're simply going to be learning how the law works, how family law works in Florida. But I guarantee you, as you continue to work at this firm and get better at understanding how family law works, you will learn this skill. You will master this skill. And so this is your first step in a very much longer journey, if you will, when it comes to understanding the law and how it works. So 4 years ago, Janet was diagnosed with cancer, as we talked about. This will affect her need in the need and ability to pay elements of alimony and postmarital spousal support, as well as her child support figure. However, Janet claims that her cancer does not affect her ability to parent the couple's son. That's hugely important, because one of the counter arguments that Steve's attorneys could make in this case is that Janet is too sick to parent, and therefore Steve needs to be the primary caregiver, the primary parent in this case. Janet can be the secondary parent, and we won't even ask for child support because she can't work, but give us the kid so that our client can be the primary parent because Janet's too sick. So I threw that fact in there for a reason, even though this may not necessarily qualify as an issue in this case. It could be an issue, so I would write it down just in case if this were a real life fact pattern, and be sure to tell your attorneys, your bosses, that, hey, Janet told me that even though she was just diagnosed with cancer several years ago, she's not so sick that she can't parent their son, because that is an important fact. So Janet is seeking a divorce and primary custody of her son, and of course is now discussing these matters with you during a potential client intake interview. Again, that last line, that she is seeking a divorce and primary custody of her son, the primary custody part obviously is an issue, because that will become a big point of argument moving forward. So again, just about every sentence in this hypothetical was an issue and something that you would write down and analyze. And in fact, in this model answer that I gave my family law students in this course, I go through the IRAC formula, and I'm not gonna go through all of this now because that would take a long time, and you don't need to. This isn't a family law course, but I will post all of this to Canvas as part of the weekly class lecture, the written lecture portion. And so I want you to read through that to kind of get a sense of how the IRAC formula works: issue, rule, analysis, conclusion, issue, rule, analysis, conclusion, or IRAC. And again, the I stands for issue, and that is what we're doing at this stage, is kind of learning how important this skill is to being a good paralegal, a good legal assistant, and for some of you, maybe even a good attorney in the future. And also how hard it is, especially at this stage of your academic careers, where you are still kind of learning how the law works. And so being good at issue spotting and analyzing those issues requires a knowledge of the law, and you will accumulate that over time. This is chapter 2 in the textbook. I wanted to cover it. I wanted to show you very slowly and in detail what issue spotting is and how it works, simply because I think the textbook and some of the other materials out on the internet are just more designed for law students, or they're just not very clear on how this works. And none of them really come out and say, hey, you kind of need to know the law before you become good at issue spotting. And again, no one can expect you to be able to know the law at this stage. But that is kind of an introduction to the concept of issue spotting. Again, I will post all of this, including this video, obviously, to Canvas, so that you can review the model answer along with this video and kind of get a good idea of how the IRAC formula works and how issue spotting works. And then maybe as part of the class exercise or just on your own, you can kind of try this with other cases that you read. What I'm going to do for the class exercise is we're going to take some of the elements from the textbook assignments and apply them. But I'm also going to give you another fact pattern where it's going to be a little more difficult to spot the issues. But I'm going to just see if you can do that. I don't want any analysis. I'm not asking for legal analysis on the assignment. Just simply you writing down what each issue is. And look, whether it's a law school exam or you're working at a law firm, writing it down, even if you're not sure, but you just want to make sure that you get it down on paper, you can never go wrong with that. If you when in doubt, write it down, list it as an issue, and if it isn't, so be it, but at least you didn't fail to cover it, which could help you later on down the road when you are doing this more proficiently. So that is issue spotting, at least kind of a general primer of how to do it. I've attached some other videos from some other attorneys. These videos are more designed for law students, but they still do a decent job of describing how issue spotting works and how hard it is. And so hopefully you'll get a better idea and feel for that. But we will get into this in more detail later on in the course. But this was just a beginning, and I hope this was helpful to you. If any of you have any questions about issue spotting or anything else involved in this course, as you know, you can always contact me via Canvas. Just DM me through Canvas or email me through Outlook, and I will get back with you. Hope you have a great day. Thanks for taking the time to listen, and we'll talk again soon. Take care.